All right, we are Tungsten Nebula, and this is our Sprint 3 Milestone presentation. Just to remind you, our game is PhotoShootOut. It's a fast-paced local multiplayer arcade action game about taking amazing wildlife photos. I'm Aaron Solon, the co-producer and a designer and programmer.
I'm Antonio Vasquez. I'm the level designer and narrative designer.
I'm Emma Christensen. I'm the 2D and concept artist.
I'm Lia Fry. I'm the 3D animator.
Hi, I'm Xiao Ma. I'm a 3D artist.
I'm Sadeem Boji. I'm a co-producer and programmer.
I'm Jonathon Moore. I'm another programmer.
Hi, I'm Bendtsen. I am a UI and UX programmer.
We're also working with Gaby, Bendtsen, and Dominic Vasquez on sound effects.
And let's get into the demo. So, the first thing you guys can notice is we have a bunch of new environmental assets with the trees and the grass. We have also updated the player UI. As you can see now, instead of saying frames and photos, it just says photos. And right above it is little gears for our wind mechanic. As we see here, we just took a photo of a moose, and we have a little star system, and we've also updated the scoring relevant to that. So right here is our new aim mechanic, where instead of showing you a first-person point of view, it shows you a ray of light relevant to where you're aiming your control stick. And it also puts a little flash on the animal. One other mechanic that we've updated is how to take a photo. Instead of having a frame where you can only take 2 photos and have to reload at the relay, you have unlimited photos, but after you take any photo, you have to rewind your camera, which is what those gears represent. Our goal for Sprint 3 was to iterate and improve on many aspects of our game, and we got progress on all parts.
All right, jumping right into design. We tested various different control schemes for the game and narrowed it down to our favorite, which is a dual stick control scheme that just feels a lot better than the ones that we had started with. And that was made possible by the fact that we're now targeting the game as more of a console game than a specifically arcade game. We also implemented a new winding mechanic, which is sort of like a fun way to have a cooldown on taking photos. And we use that to replace the relay mechanic that you all saw in the last play test. And we've also reworked the design of our UI and cameras to just feel better in the game.
Another aspect of the system design progress was continued work on animal behaviors. This sprint, we finished the wolf documentation, including how it interacts with other wolves, the player, and the moose. And it's ready to implement into the code. In addition, we have also done a few passes on the existing moose AI, making sure that the behaviors are happening at a good frequency and that the transitions all seem natural.
We spent a lot of time tweaking our scoring system as well. It used to be very all or nothing, where you would either get a great photo or a terrible photo. And there's a lot more of sort of like a curve to the scoring now, which makes it feel better and a little more understandable as well. And we've also set up a great photo testing scene where the designers can go in and set up photos in Unity, see how many points they're worth. And that's been really useful in tweaking the numbers for the photo balance.
On the level design front, we have continued to iterate on the level based on the feedback we have received from both internal and external playtesting. These have included changing the positions of spawners and changing how the rates of spawning are calculated based on how many players there are. We also changed the dimensions of the level for it to better fit the camera. It is now shorter and wider. We also implemented new environmental assets, including grasses that animals and players can interact with, and new trees.
Moving to art progress, this sprint, we focused on the player character, and we completely scrapped the previous idea and started fresh. On the upper right, you can see some of the first concepts. We were going between Bigfoot and an alien character, and we settled on Bigfoot. On the left, you can see the current design. The UI is also something that we focused on this sprint, working on the animal emotes in the lower left and also starting on the wolf concept.
Follow the concept art. This main sprint model test is molding out the play characters. This is our first wishes based on the Bigfoot prototype. I also translated about N64 style coin to help me have a clear image to model in my mind. And based on the IT people sessions, I will blot out the cinema pieces instead of cutting up the models. This will allow me to have more control over the shapes. That's the Captain American reference. That's my next role of character. And also I begin to work on the wolf models based on the before the most experience. So this whole process is more easy and clear to know what I needed than before the most models. So I will improve and finish the wolf at the next sprint.
And then on the animation side, I've been focusing on finishing the main actions that the moose takes. So the idle, the walk, run, attack, and eat animations are done. And I specifically was working towards the moose communicating when it was fleeing or in a scared state, as previously it was unclear to the player when they took a photo. Along with that, I've been working with John to make sure the animations fit the mechanics of the AI and have been adjusting the timing in games so they play at the right speeds and they transition smoothly between each action. And then aside from animation, I started the rig for Bigfoot now that we have the general shape planned out, and I continued adding to the skybox shader by adding clouds for more subtle details that will appear in the player's photos.
Now onto the code. So we have completely overhauled the coding system, and now we judge based on not only the moose head, but it's also its body, and we score based on it if the moose is centered, if it's facing you, how big it is, if it's blocked by anything, and other animals or players in the photo.
On the game loop front, we have gotten a few things done. First, we've been redoing the way that player feedback is handled as far as taking a photo is concerned. So before, we had a first-person camera for every player that they'd be able to see exactly what their camera was seeing at any given time for when they took a photograph. This felt a little bit too busy, and players weren't fully clicking with it, so we've switched over to a Polaroid printout style of feedback where you get to see the picture that was immediately captured when you hit the button, as well as a ranking from 1 to 4 stars, 1 being the worst, 4 being the best, of how good the photo was and roughly how well it'll probably be able to score. Additionally, we've changed the photo relay. It's no longer used as essentially an ammo refill station. It's just used for respawning the player, to be a central place for players to start the game and to respawn the event that they die. And a lot of the UI scripts have been refactored to make a little bit more sense. Additionally, we've been adding in the ability for players to restart a game at the end of a round. So when the round ends and the timer runs out, you see who the winner is, and you can either go back to the main menu and connect different controllers, or you can restart the game with the same players and the same connected controllers.
On the AI side of things, we rework state logic for more clarity and player understanding, especially when it comes to alerting an animal they want to actually run away from you instead of running towards you. That really confused our players. We also added camera flash, where the moose will now react to a camera flash close to them and will alert them, and they will flee. And we've also just been bug fixing for consistency for unwanted behavior and bugs in the moose.
We've also finished the transition from the new input system to Rewired, which has really helped a lot. It makes it easier to prototype new control schemes and also just works with our game loops. So you can now play a match, return to the join menu, join possibly with a different set of players, and then play again, and it all loops properly. We've also continued the iteration on the player controller, just adding new features to that to make it feel a little better and interact well with the environment, as well as adding the winding mechanic.
Now on to sound. With the help of Dominic and Gaby, we were able to add a camera sound effect and some level music. We hope to continue work with them for the rest of the game.
Looking forward for the next sprint, there's a lot of things we want to keep working on. We want to improve our menus and add controller input support to those menus. We want to continue to improve the level, keep play testing as much as possible to get more feedback. We want to keep balancing, especially on the animal behavior mix and the scoring values. We want to keep adding content, including the wolf animal and the player visuals and tons of other small details that we have documented, but we don't have time to talk about right now. Thanks very much.